Here to discuss a 27-year-old cold case that our detectives have solved. In addition to that, I have with me here today Chuck Watson. Chuck is one of the sons of Karen Watson, who is the victim of this vicious murder a long, long time ago. So let me go over the details with you. Karen Watson was 41 at the time she was murdered. They lived on the old Polk City Road in Lake Alfred, Florida. Karen was stabbed 11 times. 4 of the wounds were fatal. We have arrested Carl McCauley. Carl McCauley was 37 at the time. He is now 64 years of age. We found McCauley living at 913 Vine Street in Sandusky, Ohio. And here's what happened as we pieced together the time frame. 27 years ago, Carl went to Karen Watson's house after arguing with his wife, Jackie Sue McCauley, at a Lake Alfred bar. Carl went to Karen's house someplace around 12:30, 12:40, 12:45 in the afternoon of that fateful day. He stabbed Karen 11 times. Charles Watson, the victim's husband, returned home about 1:30 and found his wife nude on the couch in the living room, viciously murdered. He jumped in the car, he drove to a neighbor's for help. He told them what had occurred, and deputies arrived to investigate. And now we're going to give you a set of circumstances that we learned then, or we have learned over the past 27 years. All of the parties involved, Charles and his wife Karen Watson, actually knew McCauley's. At the time of the arrest, Charles was a person of interest. In fact, he was questioned over and over and over in the ensuing years. He always completely denied that he had anything at all to do with the murder of his wife. We were able to establish witnesses that saw a strange white male in the area of Karen Watson's home on the day in question. We also established witnesses that said that there was a strange 1976 Chevy, kind of a two-tone brown and gold color, that was not common in the area that was seen. Charles Watson, Karen's husband, has been completely accounted for. He left the residence earlier in the day. He went to Lake Wales for work, and when he returned to the home, he obviously found Karen murdered. He was not at the residence at the time of the murder. There are independent witnesses, not only witnesses from where he was working at a laundromat or a laundry in Lake Wales, but there are other witnesses that testify they saw him come back down the road to the house. So he was cleared as a suspect of actually committing the murder. In 1989, we figured out who Carl McCauley was, some period of time later. He was then determined to be a person of interest. Now understand, back in 1987 when this first happened, DNA was a brand new science. In fact, you had to have a significant quantity of DNA in order for them to test at all. The amount of DNA that was recovered from the crime scene that fateful day was not significant for this brand new science at that time, DNA, and DNA was not successfully tested. The case remained cold for many, many years but the case has never been forgotten. Our detectives found Carl McCauley, and they found him located in Sandusky, Ohio. We asked the Sandusky, Ohio police to assist us, and I must tell you they were overtly helpful during the investigation. When we went to Ohio on June the 3rd, once again we talked to Carl Sandusky upon arriving in Ohio, and he said he knew the victim and he knew where she lived. And Carl said he had never gone into the residence of Karen and Charles. Carl denied a sexual relationship with Karen Watson. Carl gave us DNA pursuant to a search warrant we had obtained. He cooperated that day, but he denied any knowledge of a murder or sexual relationship. On June the 27th, the Florida Department Law Enforcement Lab confirmed that the DNA from Carl McCauley matched the crime scene DNA that we'd received from Karen Watson's house. So at this particular time on August 27th, we went back to Ohio and we arrested Carl McCauley for the murder of Karen Watson. It's been a long 27 years for the family. Before asking for his lawyer, however, Carl changed his story. Isn't that amazing? And he said he had had sex with Karen on that day at her residence, but he didn't kill her. So let me get this right. We can account for her husband. We see the suspicious vehicle and person, which turns out to be you. You're at her residence. You have sex with her, but you're the only one there and you didn't kill her. Save that for the jury. I can tell you that we've also found witnesses that recall seeing a significant cut on Carl's hand just after that day, which clearly indicates to us that he cut himself on the knife while he was in the process of murdering Karen. Unfortunately, Charles died in June of this year. He died before we could give him the good news that we arrested the murderer of his wife. Chuck Watson, who's here with us today, was only 19 at the time. He also had two twin brothers whose birthday was to be the very next day, and a party was planned for them by Karen, their mother. Karen was never able to see the twins' 16th birthday. She was never able to have the party because Carl McCauley took her life. Well, one thing I've got to share with you, when we went there to arrest Carl, we saw his vehicle, and on his vehicle he had this sign, "Smile, your government's watching you." He's exactly right. We were watching him. The Sandusky, Ohio police were watching him, and we're smiling. I don't think he is today. With that, let me first show you, we also put, as one of our unsolved homicide playing cards that we did for many years, put Karen on this in an effort to determine who may have murdered her. This is one of the efforts that detectives tried over the years. But let me ask Chuck to come up now and speak with you. Chuck is the oldest son?
Yes.
Come on up, Chuck, and talk to the folks.
Hi. I want to first of all thank Polk County Sheriff's Department for everything they've done, for all their efforts. 27 years is a long time. I'm just grateful that that they made the effort to pursue this cold case. It's going to give other people that have been victims of these type of crimes hope that no one will give up. They'll keep reviewing the cases. It's a happy day and it's a sad day. My father, unfortunately, won't be here to see this happen, but I think he kind of knew everything was happening. And my brother Steve, who died in 2003, he's definitely a victim in this too. I'm just grateful for everything the Polk County Sheriff's Department has done. I don't know what else to say. I'm speechless. I have some pictures of my mother.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
You said you hope other people don't give up hope. Did you?
No, you don't give up hope, but after 27 years, like the first 10, 15 years, you think about it every day. You know, you've probably heard people say before, there isn't a day that doesn't go by I don't think about this person that I lost. But 27 years, you grow old, you have a family, you have kids, life happens. You don't think about it every day. You can't. You have to kind of put that somewhere so you can manage it and move on with your life. You never get over it. My brother, unfortunately, never got over it. He committed suicide in 2003. But I never gave up hope. I had to put it somewhere else to manage it and say I've got to move on with my life. And I knew from time to time people would look at the case. You kind of have hope that maybe something would happen like what happened. And I'm just very grateful, very grateful.
Did you know this man? I mean, was he close to the family at one point?
I know him. I've seen him at my parents' house. I knew him also by his nickname, which was Buck. Spoken to him on occasions, but I have not seen him since my mother's death.
Never talked to him even?
Not since my mother's death.
Were you ever suspicious about him?
I don't know if I should comment on that at this time. I was suspicious about a lot of people because it was an unsolved case. So,
If you had a chance to say something to Buck right now, what would it be?
I think I would tell this man that if you want to do the right thing, just say everything that happened. Clear your conscience. If you don't have a conscience, do some good for other people by saying everything that happened.
You mentioned that your dad kind of maybe saw pieces coming together before his death. Do you think he would have some relief today?
Yeah, definitely. Unfortunately, with the circumstances with my mom's death, and him being a person of interest in the beginning, there were people who thought that he did the murder, he committed the murder. So I know in my heart, my family knows, my friends know that he didn't do it, but there are a lot of other people out there that maybe didn't know. Now they'll know, and he'll have that vindication.
I know you said you kind of put this in a place where you could leave it for a while. How does it feel right now having it? Where is it now for you?
Just like any normal person, I'm feeling a wide range of emotions. Anger, I'm feeling some joy that we'll have an answer. I don't think I'll ever have an answer for why, or even if I did have it, that probably isn't going to isn't gonna be a good enough answer, but at least who, you know, I'll be experiencing the joy from knowing that, but just a wide range of emotions.
Can you tell us a little bit about your mother?
My mother grew up in western Pennsylvania, about 90 miles north of Pittsburgh, in a small town called Clarion, and her and my father were high school sweethearts. They married at a young age. My mom was 19 and my dad was 20. That's their wedding picture. So she was a loving mother. I could talk to her about anything. I never had to worry about my parents telling me they loved me. I was fortunate in that respect. I had a good childhood. She was a good mother. Everything she did for us. So we moved to Florida in 1980 and made a new home in Florida, and unfortunately somebody took that away.
Chuck, did you guys move out of Lake Alfred pretty quickly after what happened?
No, my father continued to live on that property until his death in June. My brother Steve lived there until 2003, for the most part. He stayed there. He always felt like no matter what happened, he wasn't going to let anybody drive him away from there, because my mother and father were very happy living on Old Polk City Road.
Is that hard for you to go back to that house?
Yeah, I always feel anxiety when I'm there. I mean, how could you not? But I have good memories there too, with my brothers and with my father, with my friends. All my friends are very close, not just with my dad, with my mom growing up. So there's good memories there too.
Kind of a question for both of you guys, but will we know why? I know we know who, but will we know why?
I don't have an answer for that.
Along the same lines, this is a sensitive area, but the whole case is based, or much of the case is based on DNA evidence. Can you describe, Grady, the relationship that they had before this? You know, does this appear that it was an ongoing relationship or something that just happened that one time that might have been forced?
What we know is they at least had knowledge of each other. They frequented bars. That was one of their social gathering spots, and they had knowledge of each other, the families. But on this particular day, based upon what Carl McCauley said, he had never been inside the residence. He had never had a sexual relationship at all with Karen. So we're left with DNA evidence, circumstantial evidence, and a man who immediately changed his story once he figured out, I've provided the DNA. You're going to they obviously have DNA from the house, so now I've got to say that I had a relationship with her, a sexual relationship with her, or else I can't explain why there's DNA in the house. So we believe that he's crafted a story now to match the evidence he perceives we have, when prior to the DNA, he had no knowledge of anything we were talking about.
Do you mind sharing those pictures with us?
Sure.
I'm going to hold them for a little bit so we can zoom into them.
All right. This is my mother in 1984 giving my dad a haircut in the kitchen.
Was that a regular ritual for them?
Yeah. Like me, he didn't have a lot of hair, so it didn't take long. That's my mother and father in 1983 at Disney World, which my mom later on got a job there. She worked at Uptown Jewelers on Main Street. She really enjoyed working at Disney. This is my mom on the property about 9 months before she was murdered there. That's my mother and I, about 10 years before she was murdered.
You were about 9?
Yeah, about 9 or 10. This is a picture that sits in my daughter's room. My daughter's name is Karen. So she knows who she's named after. That's a picture of my mother with my twin brothers about 3 months before her death.
I'm sorry, who are the men?
Those are my brothers, twin brothers, Bill and Steve.
So it was just the three of you, correct?
Yes. That's about it as far as pictures.
Is Bill still local, or did you say he moved away?
He lives in San Diego.
You know, when you look at these cases, we see them from an investigative perspective, but I think Chuck's really told the story here. This is why we never forget our victims, because it's not just the victim of the homicide, but it's the grieving family that's left behind without the answers. And our goal is to try to bring some closure, to try to obtain some answers, and certainly to bring the person that is responsible for the vicious murder of these victims to justice. This is the 5th cold case that we've cleared since 2012, and we have other cold cases that are actively under investigation at this time. And the word to those suspects: you may have killed someone a long time ago. We've not forgotten the victims, and we've not forgotten you either. So our detectives will continue to do the wonderful job that they have done on current homicides and past homicides. We're almost, for how many years without, 5 years? We are working on our 6th year. We have no unsolved homicides in the past 5 years. And we're working on year 6, right? We hit 6, so we're working on 7. We have no unsolved homicides in the past 6 years. Our homicide team is simply the absolute best that you'll find any place in the nation. And we've been blessed this year. There's only been 3 murders. They all occurred on one night by the same person, and he committed suicide 2 days later in Knoxville. So it's given us additional time to work on cold cases. And ladies and gentlemen, as you can imagine, when a case is 27 years old, it is exceptionally difficult to work these cases. When you see the 19-year-old kid now has gray hair, a lot of the witnesses are old or may not be with us any longer, and unfortunately, the victim's soulmate just died in June and was unable to share this day with us today. But we'll continue to work these cases, not only for the victim who's deceased, but for the family who remains.